I don't think Jim Montgomery, and I know it seems like it was miles away talking about last season, but I don't think Jim Montgomery had a bottom six that he trusted. He certainly didn't have a fourth line that he trusted. And I think if you go back and look, whether it's the Bruins teams that really had good runs, or you look at the teams that are now some of the better teams in the National Hockey League, yes, you have a good top six, but you also have a bottom six that you can trust. So the Bruins have to address certainly the talent that they have in that top six group, but they also really have to help themselves out in that bottom six. Yes, they have to bolster a little bit of the back end. Obviously, you've got a departure in Brandon Carlos, so what does that look like on the right side? Who's going to man some of those minutes? But I think overall, and now we're getting into some of the heavy lifting that really has to take place for the team, whether it's through free agency, trades, or from some of the solutions that have to come from within the roster.
Yeah, and I think if you talk to the head coaches, and I know you want to talk about Joe Sacco, if you talk to the head coaches around the National Hockey League, I think all of them, to a man, would say, good teams, they have a good top six. The really good teams, the teams that are going to contend for the Stanley Cup, they're three lines deep. And, to your point, Judd, you need a fourth line, you need an identity line, you need a line that can maybe change momentum, and you want that consistency from that fourth line. But the really good teams, they roll nine. They roll nine in the forward group.
Absolutely. Brick, sorry we're not going to expand on that thought because we only have about 7 minutes left in the show, and we definitely want to address this coaching situation. Before we kind of get into talking about Joe Sacco, let's play the interview you had with him after the final game of the season.
You took over this team, after the first, 16, 17, 18 games, whatever it was. But it was a year of challenging circumstances. Just your final thoughts on what your experience has been like here as we wrap up this regular season.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit emotional, obviously. I think that, when the change happened, I think it was around the 20-game mark. We started to get things turned around. The guys started to play better hockey. We were better defensively. It started to slip a little bit around the new year, and then obviously at the deadline there was some changes that were made to the group. But I've enjoyed the experience, Brick. It's like you said, it's been challenging, but that's part of the job, right? And I think that being from this area and having the opportunity to coach the Bruins is very special to me. Well,
from all of us here at Nesson, and certainly from myself, we appreciate you taking some minutes right after a game, win or lose, to come on and give us your insights and give us your thoughts on what just transpired. So we thank you for that.
Thanks, Brick. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Well, gem of a human being, Joe Sacco, and going to be an interesting summer for him. There are 3 possible scenarios, and I'd like to get your thoughts on them. Obviously, one scenario could be that he comes back as the head coach. The other is that he remains on the staff as an assistant, which would be weird to go from a head coach down to assistant, or he's not with the Bruins organization anymore, guys. He was obviously looked like he was a little bit emotional there at the end, but he was also taking this all in because he doesn't know what's going to happen this summer, and it was a weird year for him to take over, as you mentioned. I don't want to ask predictions because that's not really fair, but maybe an assessment on the season that was with all the weird cards he was dealt, guys.
Well, a lot of moving parts and a lot of different ways you can try to answer that question. He's been part of the Bruins coaching staff for better than a decade. I think the Bruins value Joe Sacco as a hockey coach, a guy that has the ability to teach, a guy that has a good understanding of the game, a guy that can message the right way to today's players. I think Joe Sacco as a head coach, I think he went in with his eyes wide open into the situation that he was inheriting when they moved on from Jim Montgomery. I think he understood the challenges that were in front of him and, what was happening with the Bruins in terms of how the room was changing, the leadership was changing, the uncertainty of contracts and leadership. But as a coach, when you've had head coaching experience at the NHL, you want another kick at the can. You want a second chance, if not a third chance, another fourth chance. The stuff that you've learned, the experience and the maturity that you've gotten since the last time you had the reins in your hand as the head coach. And I think that's the biggest reason that he was willing to accept the challenge that was offered to him when the coaching change was made. Where the Bruins go from here, I have no idea, but I feel like the Bruins certainly value Joe. They want him to be part of the equation moving forward. Whether Joe wants to be a part of that, if he's not the head coach, that's certainly up to him and his family and whatever decision. But I'll tell you right now, the coaches that have been here, that Joe has worked for, whether it was Bruce Cassidy or Jim Montgomery, I know those guys value him, and that if Joe was available and a free agent, I think it would be another one of those situations where a Bruins coach would be swallowed up in quick order if he was looking to make a coaching change to a different organization.
I think he did a really respectable job considering the situation. He was trying to put the team back on track after the first 20 games where they were one game under 500 against Jim Montgomery. And they obviously started to turn it around heading into the Christmas break. It was after the Christmas break, and as Joe alluded to, heading into the Four Nations tournament, that the Bruins just couldn't reclaim some of the rhythm that they had heading into that Christmas break. And that's part of the reason that we're having this conversation here today. But he did a really respectable job, and he is really respected around the league and in the room. I thought it was interesting that Morgan Geekie was asked about him after the game, and he said, listen, Joe's awesome, and he was put in a tough situation. And Brick, I don't know how you feel, but I think a testament to how the players feel about the head coach is the effort that they're putting in on a night-in, night-out basis, and this team did not check out.
Oh, I thought that was a question for Brick. Sorry, sorry, guys. I just kind of left you hanging. Brick, do you want to say anything to that, or should I move on and wrap the show?
No, I mean, I agree with Judd. Judd and I have had these conversations all year, certainly when things were at their worst. You know, you're on the road, you spend time together, you talk hockey, you talk Bruins, you talk where are the solutions. You know, how do the coaches get the Bruins to play better, more consistent? How do you eliminate the mistakes that they? And we have all those conversations all the time. So this is not fresh material between Judd and I. When we've talked about Joe and his ability to try to get the most out of the roster that he was given, and it was challenging. It was really hard. You know, this is a league where talent wins. You know, if everyone says, well, hard work can outperform talent. Well, if everybody works hard and that's equal, what wins? Talent wins. And the Bruins need more talent. The Bruins need more talent. It's that simple.
Yeah, so Sophia, that was actually a quick conversation that we probably had at the London pub at the tail end of the season in Montreal.
Our only trip into Montreal.
Not enough.
Yeah, exactly. Not enough.